G'day, how's it going? Sholstein Photography here. For anybody who doesn't know, I'm quite new to the YouTube, not so much YouTube, but adding videos to YouTube. So I'm at the basically the beginning of the journey. I've only got 3 other videos that are up, so I thought because I'm at that beginning, I might have a look at where it all began for my aviation photography. So I thought I'd just come through and go through where I started, what I've done throughout the years, so yeah, how I think I've progressed. Show you some of the photos from my first couple of air shows compared to the types of pictures I'm getting now. As I said, it is a learning journey, so if you could like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, that'd be great, so I can start building up a bit of an audience. But the comment thing, if you've got any constructive criticism for me, that'd be fantastic. Looking to obviously improve. The best way to improve is to get some feedback on what you're doing at the time. I did shoot this video last night. It was quite long, much longer than I think it probably should be. So that's one of the things I've sort of learning, I think. Try not to make it too long. First few videos are quite long, so I'm trying to just keep them a bit short. So I'll try and do this in about 3 parts, just to keep the length of each one down to something manageable. So we'll kick off. I first got into the photography a little bit more serious back in 2010. I wouldn't say serious. I got myself a DSLR. So I got the Canon 1000D, and I got it with 2 kit lenses. So it came with the 18 to 55mm lens that's on here at the moment, and it also had the 75 to 300mm kit lens as well. Both of those non-image stabilized. Basically got that particular camera because, as I said, it was the first real proper camera, I guess you could say, that I've ever bought. I didn't want to spend too much money, but I did want to get some better pictures of my kids growing up, holiday pictures, when out and about. For instance, do a lot of trips up to the mountains, take in waterfalls, views across the various valleys, that sort of stuff. So I wanted to be able to take some better quality pictures. So I thought I'd pick this one up just to see how it went. And basically take my camera everywhere with me now since picking that one up. So as I said, that was back in 2010. Now my airshow journey didn't start back then. I actually started very slowly. My first airshow was an airshow that coincided with an Hawaii holiday I went on with my family and some friends of ours. And whilst there, I went to Wings Over the Pacific. So Wings Over the Pacific was in Honolulu, around Pearl Harbor. Went there with a mate who's right into aviation, particularly helicopters. And my love of the air shows really came from, started with going to air shows with him. So, as I said, 2014, Wings Over the Pacific, took my 1000D along and captured a few photos. I was very happy with what I got on the day. When I look at what I captured back then compared to what I capture now, I think there's a massive difference. But I was still very happy with what I got. Very new to photography, extremely new to air shows. As I said, first one I ever did. The settings I was using back then were auto settings, particularly considering it was an air show with fast action. I thought, I'll just keep it in auto, let the camera do most of the work, because I really didn't know what would be good settings for aviation photography. So a couple of the pictures from Wings Over the Pacific. You can see here I've got the Blue Angels. They've parked the F-18s up. got them all nicely in a line. You can see 1 through to 6, 7's missing there. I got the C17 Globemaster in the back, and at this particular point in time I was very into the long and narrow panoramic type pictures, so you can see that this one is quite wide. One of the things that I wouldn't do these days would be to create this type of picture. I've cropped that quite heavily to be able to give that sort of view. I would these days have quite a bit more foreground, a little bit more of the sky in here, just to make it, I think, probably a better picture than what this one is. But as you can see, not a bad picture, pretty clear, focus is good. I'm pretty happy with how that one actually came out. That obviously was a static display, so, well, they weren't static for the whole day, but for that particular part, that was static, so quite easy to get that focus. Move on to the F-22, and you can see starting to get a few issues with the pictures of the fast-moving jets. So zoom in, you can see quite grainy, quite noisy. Focus isn't too bad. You know, you can actually see the decals on the plane. Again, quite narrow picture, plenty of room for that plane to fly into. Getting some vortices on the wingtips. Overall, pretty happy with that back in the day. Move on to the C17 Globemaster, and again, focus is pretty good. Can easily read all the bits and pieces on the airplane. It's pretty well in focus. Again, I've gone for that quite narrow, wide, but sort of thin look, the panoramic type look. One thing that you do notice though, when you zoom in, the editing, got that halo around the plane. Not something that I'd be putting up these days. And the last one that I'll show you from the Wings Over the Pacific is the Blue Angels number 5, starting to go vertical. You can see looks fairly good, pretty happy with that. Got the smoke trail, the vortices off the wingtips. But the thing is, when you zoom in, there's not a lot of detail. Now, I'm using obviously the 1000D. It's not the world's greatest camera. The biggest lens I have here is that 75 to 300mm kit lens, so I can't get really close to the action. Basically, this would be quite heavily cropped too from how far away those planes were on the day. But overall, I was pretty happy with how I went. Now you probably think, oh, hooked from the first air show. No, not really. Quite enjoyed it, but wasn't exactly hooked on air shows from that one air show. In fact, it wasn't for another 7 years before I went to another air show, and the next air show I went to was Paul Bennett air show on the central coast of New South Wales, and it was the Warnervale Central Coast Air Show. So by 2021, I'd moved on in cameras. I'd gone from the 1000D to the Canon 700D. And basically, I was starting to get more into the photography, so I wanted a better camera than the 1000D, just something a bit of an improvement. At the time, I was talking quite a lot with one of my friends who was right into photography. He was using the 7D. I sort of mentioned I didn't want to spend that sort of money because I was still undecided as to whether I really wanted to get decent equipment or not. So he recommended the 700D, which was a pretty good recommendation. It served me quite well, I think. When I picked up the 700D, also got some new kit lenses. I got the 18 to 55 again, and I also got the 55 to 250mm kit lens. The difference between these two and the ones I got with the 1000D are that these two had image stabilization. At the time, we're still using the 300, the 75 to 300 mil lens, and the reason I was using that was just so I get a little bit closer to the action. Being able to zoom in that extra 50 mil, just, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it does make a difference. So when I was moving into this air show, my second air show, wasn't really focused on aviation photography, more on the landscapes, those sorts of things. So I actually was using aperture priority. I'd gone away from the auto settings and I was starting to use aperture priority. And the reason I was doing that is, I'm taking pictures of things that aren't moving. So I could afford to go the aperture priority. Maybe it gave me the ability to, either, blur that background or have the background, completely in focus with the foreground, middle ground, background sort of thing. So doing the more the landscape type stuff, I'd moved into that aperture priority, and not knowing any better, I just used those settings for this particular air show. I managed to get some pretty good shots, I think. The big thing with using the aperture priority wasn't controlling the shutter speed. So you can see in this first picture, I actually got pretty lucky. Got a little bit of prop blur on the propeller of the plane here. I've managed to capture the motorbike backflipping over the top of the airplane, so I think the timing was pretty good. But you can see the focus was a bit off. Focus is pretty much on the landing ramp here. If we zoom in, we're not really all that clear on the plane here, and neither are we really all that clear on the motorbike. So the focus is a little bit off, but still a pretty decent picture, I think, particularly since it was only my second air show. And I started getting some shots like this. You can see that's pretty well focused. You can read even some of the finer print here. But again, freezing the action, so don't have any real prop blur, don't have a lot of blur in the background here to suggest that speed that you want to have in your airshow photos. Same with this one as he's taxiing in. Again, basically no prop blur at all. A tiny little bit of it, but not much. And when we zoom in, we've got fairly grainy, noisy picture. But considering we're using kit lenses, I think not too bad. This one I was quite happy with. The focus is really good. Pilot's quite clear. There's a little bit of blur in that background. There's virtually none on the prop, but the plane's pretty well in focus. You can read the advertisers stickers on the back. Pretty happy with that. So from that air show, I think is probably where I started to get a little bit more serious about taking photos at air shows. And I went to the Central Coast Air Show again the following year. So back at Warnervale, and I'd picked up some extra lenses at this point, so I still had my 700D. But to go with that, to pair with it, I had the Tamron 16 to 300 mil lens, which was a great multi-purpose lens. Used that quite a lot, not just at air shows, but also on holidays, outings, that sort of stuff. Fantastic lens, general purpose lens, basically. But it also managed to pick up the Tamron 150 to 600 mil lens, and this was a game changer for me. Just it allowed me to get so much closer to the action with that 600 mil. With the 600 mil lens, could get right in close to the action. Particularly seeing at the time I was using the 700D, which is a crop lens, a crop APS crop camera. Makes the 600 probably adds a little bit of reach, being that crop sensor. And I'm starting to get what I consider some better pictures, clearer pictures, showing more detail. Still a bit grainy, still a bit noisy, but an improvement on what I was getting previously. So you can see with the F-35, the pictures are just starting to be a bit clearer. Some good, it's good action here. You've got the vortices starting to come over the wingtip, got the afterburner. The fact that I can get closer to the action basically means I can get the clearer shots. Looking at the Spitfire here, it's nicely in focus. The only thing is I'm not, as I said, not using shutter priority here at the moment. Aperture priority is what I'm in. It's actually in aperture priority for a couple of years. Didn't really learn to move to the shutter priority till a bit later, and I think that was a big difference as well. So you can see there's no blur on that prop at all. But the plane's nicely in focus. Obviously don't get too close. You can see we start to get a little bit of blur, a bit of noise in there, a bit of grain. But happy with that picture. Has the nice outline of that Spitfire, that iconic elliptical shaped wing. And we can see here getting a little bit of prop blur, not a lot because I'm not using the settings that I would use if I was taking that photo today. But starting to get some pictures that I think are starting to look a bit better. I often have people ask me, was I in another plane when taking these, because I was able to start to get some pictures that look like you're almost on the same level. Now, obviously, I haven't been in a plane to shoot another plane before. These are just ones that I've been able to get. And the planes come in fairly low at the air show, so you're not exactly in line with them, but you can make it look like you kind of are. So that was my first 3 air shows. It's what got me started. As I said, I was quite slow to get into the air shows. A 7-year gap between my first air show and my second air show, but from there I've been a bit more consistent in actually getting to the different air shows. The Central Coast has been the one that I've been to the most, and in the next part of this videos that I'm putting together, I'm going to take a look at Avalon Airshow. That's the airshow that took place in 2023, not this year's one, but the previous airshow. It's a biannual thing. And I actually took a trip across to New Zealand to go to Warbirds over Wanaka in 2024. And then I've got some photos from Williamtown Air Base up there, the RAF base there in 24. Interesting setup there. It's also a public airport, so you've got commercial jets taking off from there with the RAF jets and the RAF planes. So we'll look at that, and we'll also look at the Central Coast, but this time in 2024. So thanks for watching. As I said, if you like what you've seen so far, like, comment, subscribe. If you want to put in some constructive criticism to let me know how I'm going, feel free. Let's just make sure it's constructive though. Don't need nastiness or anything like that, but constructive criticism, more than willing to take that on board. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye for now, and I'll be back with part 2.